Welcome and thank you so much for coming. I am Debbie Gross, CEO of Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts. Thank you for joining us at our Spring Into Action benefit in Pittsburgh. Okay, this is our second benefit, same week, and the spring is missing. But maybe we'll hopefully 3 times a charm. So we'll try it again first week in May next year, and maybe the sun will come out. But I do feel the warmth in this room, so thank you very much. We are very grateful that so many of you have joined us today in person and by Zoom. We especially want to thank our champion sponsors, Dickie McCamey and Chilcott, Bob and Eileen Kennedy Heim, UPMC, Reed Smith, and Life Mail STEAM Academy. Your generosity and support is extremely appreciated. As I speak and continuing throughout tonight's event, you will see scrolling a list of our many supporters and some wonderful tributes to our awardee, Judge Doris Ribner Smith, and our keynote speaker, Lauren Rikleen. 2023 has been and will continue to be a very active year for PMC. You ask why? This is an election year. We get excited as lawyers for election years. No, we know that historically, only 20% of Pennsylvania's voters vote during odd-numbered years, and fewer voters vote in the general election than in the primaries. PMC has focused on increasing its programming about the courts in Pennsylvania so voters will understand the tremendous impact the judiciary has on their lives. Last month, I was invited to join a Spotlight PA panel discussion primer on judicial elections. And the same day to a League of Women Voters of Greater Pittsburgh program entitled Pennsylvania Judicial Elections, What You Need to Know, in which I asked Judge Maureen Lawley Green to join me. Last week, I was interviewed on a podcast, CK Unmuted, about the judicial elections, and we will be posting it on our website. And I spoke with U.S. District Court Judge Cynthia Ruth at a senior retirement community on the judiciary and judicial elections. This Thursday at 8:30 a.m., Judge Patricia McInerney and I are discussing the court system and judicial elections at a Represent PA virtual program. And then at 4:30 p.m., I'm participating in a program sponsored by the Episcopal Community Services entitled Why Vote? All this is really important in getting information out there about judicial elections. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan. We do not make any recommendations as to which candidates to vote for, but we do make recommendations that people should go out and vote. Next week, we have our appellate court candidate judicial forum. It is the only one of these in the state. And it will be on May 9th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Bob Heim, our chairman of the board, will be the mediator. We have a lot, mediator is really the right word, because we have a lot to cover with a great number of appellate candidates in a limited time frame. So it's going to be sort of like speed networking or speed dating. And we have devoted a section of our website to information on the judicial elections. But I do want to assure you that our preoccupation with judicial elections has not decreased in any way our educational programming about the judiciary, courts, and law. To the contrary, we've increased our programming to enable us to also discuss judicial elections. For example, yesterday we held a program on landlord-tenant rights with Judge Matthew Rudsky, who's here today, in Sharpsburg with Just Mediation. We had over 15 attendees to discuss landlord-tenant rights, really engaged. It was wonderful. Tomorrow, we're also holding a landlord-tenant rights program with Judge Martini and Just Mediation in the West End. We have actually tripled our educational programming. While virtual programming has been a benefit for PMC and Pennsylvanians, we have also returned to in-person and hybrid programs. We work with our community partners on what they feel is the best way to reach their audience. So I am making a plea to you that if you know community organizations or individuals with whom we could work, please let us know. Information on our upcoming programs, as well as recordings of many of our past programs, are available on our website, and on our YouTube channel. Our Court Watch program has also grown. It initially began in Philadelphia to observe preliminary arraignments. With the development and oversight by our Pittsburgh program coordinator, Leah Simpson, we now observe preliminary arraignments in Pittsburgh Municipal Court. In 2022 to 23, we partnered with Carlow University and Chatham University to oversee several students working towards achieving either their Bachelor of Arts in Criminology or their Master's of Arts in Psychology. Students were trained to be volunteer observers and have used the opportunity to have a real-life application to their studies. The students' consistent presence in the Allegheny courtroom has been influential in increasing PMC's recognition in the court. This morning, our PMC team went to observe Judge Borkowski's motions court, in which preliminary arraignment decisions are reviewed at the request mainly of pretrial services. It was a very interesting comparison to what's going on in Philadelphia's municipal court. When enough data is gathered to represent a significant sample size, we intend to publish a report on our observations. As you can see, PMC's growth in Pittsburgh has been very exciting, and we look forward to future productive endeavors. Your financial support of PMC allows this to occur. So I would like to now welcome Paul St. Antoine of Faegre Drinker. Hopefully he's going to be on a screen to present our writing competition program and winner. Paul is a member of PMC's advisory board and has a long history of pro bono work in Pennsylvania. Paul?
Thank you, Debbie.
Oh.
And good evening, everyone. Debbie, I can assure you the sun is peeking out here in Philadelphia. It's actually shining in my eyes right now. My fellow advisory board members and I always enjoy reading each year's submissions for the PMC student writing competition. They are invariably thoughtful and idealistic, and they reflect well on the next generation of attorneys in the Commonwealth. The submissions for this year's topic, which was, can Pennsylvania require licensed attorneys to devote time each year to pro bono work, struck a particular chord. As the winning essay pointed out, the state's licensing requirements grant special privileges to attorneys, and with that is carried a special service obligation within our legal system. That's something that is a good reminder for all attorneys, even veteran counsel. The advisory board received many excellent essays this year on this topic, but one of them stood out. The winning essay, which was entitled Closing the Justice Gap, Mandatory Pro Bono as a Progressive Initiative, combined well-reasoned policy arguments for mandatory pro bono with a compelling case study from Allegheny County. It provided an important reminder to all of us about what it must feel like to be an unrepresented person in today's legal system. So on behalf of Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts and our sponsor, Faegre Drinker Bill and Wreath, I'm very pleased to announce the winner of this year's student writing competition, Anthony Jessel, from the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. Congratulations, Anthony.
Thank you. Promise I'll. Oh, yes, I will. Thank you. Thank you so much. Firstly, of course, thank you to Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts for hosting the competition itself and this special evening, and for providing such a thoughtful and provoking topic for this year. I really enjoyed writing this paper, so thank you. And of course, thank you to Faegre Drinker for their generous sponsorship. I think that this award, moving into the next few months of bar prep, will help ease quite a bit of stress. So thank you very much. And I also want to thank my wonderful, beautiful girlfriend, Jenny, for not only being a phenomenal proofreader, but for supporting me occasionally financially through law school, which all the attorneys in this room know is no walk in the park. Lastly, just brief thank you to Professor Jesse Allen here at Pitt, who has been a true mentor to me and a sounding board for many of my research endeavors. Coincidentally, I have her professional responsibility exam at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning as the last thing I'll do as a law student. So if any of you see her this evening, please say I said that. I was a little concerned with my submission that it would be a bit too doom and gloom. I knew I wanted to argue for a mandatory pro bono requirement. I didn't know that I would end up relying on quite a bit of statistical evidence to show that lawyers, by and large, do not have the best track record of actually doing pro bono work. That said, the other side of that research for me was reading and learning about a host of really impactful, wonderful projects and initiatives that lawyers locally and nationally have undertaken. And I have no doubt that one need not look further than those in attendance tonight to find plenty of examples of just that. I briefly would close with a paraphrase from something another mentor and professor at Pitt told me. David Harris recently spoke to myself and a handful of other public interest-minded law students. And he said, in so many words, that there's this idea that public service and pro bono work involves this great sacrifice, which in some sense is true, right? A lawyer undertaking that work sacrifices pay, time, and probably some degree of sanity. But I think we ought to reconsider that framework just a little bit, right? I think that lawyers are uniquely positioned across various professional industries, and that our training and experience gives us the ability to serve our communities very directly. We can ensure that folks have access to justice. And perhaps we should consider ourselves lucky to a degree, right? That pro bono work and public service work is what we get to do. It's not something that we sacrifice to do, right? And Professor Harris and many other attorneys I've spoken to have said that those moments have been some of the most defining of their careers. And I sincerely hope I can say the same for myself one day. So thank you again, and enjoy the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. So first, I want to assure you that the University of Pittsburgh awardee was completely chosen by the advisory board, had nothing to do with the fact that we are here at the University of Pittsburgh Club. Also, it's interesting, Professor Harris has spoken and taught for us at PMC and our media and our class of one-day law school for journalists. So that's great. And your essay will be on our website. So I thank you. And for those of you who are interested, also we're more than please reach out to us. And it was phenomenal. So congratulations. Okay, so I wanted to take a moment and say I am so excited to introduce Lauren Rikleen as our keynote speaker. So I did a lot of research for a keynote speaker here in Pennsylvania. We just had our first female president, Chief Justice, inducted into our Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and Lauren has a remarkable history and pedigree, speaking about women and the profession and their trajectory and history. So, she's the president of the Rikleen Institute for Strategic Learning. She's a former law partner, mediator, highly recognized and active in the American Bar Association, a former Boston Bar Association president. She is the author of 4 books. She's served on the board. She actually is the interim executive director of the Lawyers Defending American Democracy, whose mission is to galvanize the legal profession to protect democracy and the rule of law. So In 2017, to me, that's recently, I skip over the COVID a couple of years, the American Bar Association awarded her the prestigious Margaret Brent Award for Women, Margaret Brent Award for Women Lawyers of Achievement. She has just, we invited her here because she edited a book entitled Her Honor. Now, first, I apologize. We had some technical difficulties and you were each supposed to be given a book when you walked in. They didn't arrive. So we will be sending the books out to you. So just please make sure that you give, that we have your email addresses at our front desk. But the book is a compilation of stories about women judges. You know, it's a phenomenal history lesson too. There's an introduction written by Dahlia Lithwick. It talks about 25 judges from all different, all different levels of state and federal courts. She also talks about, 2 chief judges and 2 Supreme Court justices. She gives examples of the challenges that they have faced and overcame. And it's really an uplifting compilation of stories. So I highly commend this to you. And I also want to say thank you, Lauren, for coming to speak, and welcome.
Thank you for that very generous introduction. It was much appreciated. And I am very happy to be here. And it's really been enjoyable to learn about the incredible work that this organization is doing. You have a lot to be proud of. Is this okay here? Okay. And I also just wanted to congratulate Anthony for that amazing, brilliantly reasoned essay. Debbie said it was going to be put on the website. I hope everybody does read it. It makes one of the best, most compelling cases for the importance of access to justice, civil legal services that I've read, and I've been around this issue through my bar work and learning about it for a long time. And I'm just sad that after all these years, we're still in this place of intense need. And congratulations as well to Judge Smith-Ribner for being recognized with the Judge Justin Johnson Award. This is such amazing company. And I was excited to learn from Debbie about Chief Justice Todd, who is breaking yet another glass ceiling for women. So I appreciate very much the company that I am in this event. I'm particularly pleased to be speaking today at this organization's special program, because for me, it reminds me very much of my very first job out of law school, which was at the Flashner Judicial Institute. That was the first state organization created to educate judges in Massachusetts. It was modeled after, obviously, the National Judicial College, but I think one of the first of the state organizations to do that. As a new lawyer, for me, working with really the best judges in our state, because they were all friends of the justice for whom the organization was named and very dedicated to creating a very meaningful judicial education center, it really provided an understanding of the complexity of our court systems and the importance of judicial independence. And these are lessons that have always stayed with me and have been an important part of just my grounding and my thinking as a lawyer for all these years. Massachusetts is an entirely merit selection system. We're very spoiled in that state. My first exposure to elected judges was seeing a T-shirt promoting the election of a judge that was on a vendor table at a bar event. I had to ask people what was going on, because I naively did not know that elected judges was a thing. I blame my own naivety for not knowing more about this process in other states. But I further confess that I remain confounded at how the system still operates in a world of dark money and increasing partisanship, and how important it is that we need to make some reforms in this area. The recent attention on judicial elections around the country, the possible ethical lapses that we're reading about among certain members of the Supreme Court demonstrate how important it is to have organizations like Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts advocating for a fair and ethical and independent justice system. And that brings me to the book, which Debbie asked me to talk about today, Her Honor, Stories of Challenge and Triumph from Women Judges. At the height of the COVID lockdowns, I was approached by a judge who is a member of the Judicial Division of the ABA and asked if I would be willing to edit a compilation of essays from prominent women jurists. Not yet known at the time who those prominent women jurists would be, nor what the contents of those essays would be. I was actually given a lot of latitude to think about how this could possibly work and what we would want to have in that book. I knew one thing, that I wanted the book to be something that would be meaningful for people at all stages of their career, but that would have real relevance to young lawyers, law students, mid-career lawyers facing their different career choices and career paths. And what I was really concerned about was making sure that we didn't have what can often happen when you ask successful women to talk about themselves, which is they say, I was so lucky and I had great mentors. That can be true. It's wonderful for those who have that, but it does not make for interesting reading, nor is it really reflective of anybody's journey who has achieved these kinds of really amazing successes in their careers. So I created a template that all the judges who agreed to participate received, and it said, please just choose among some of these. Talk about some hard choices you might have made. How you overcame racism, sexism, other stereotyping. Did you face pay inequities, promotion inequality? How did you go about challenging the status quo? How did you deal with exerting your power in a world in which women exerting power in the workplace is not often looked on with much favor? And how did you have the emotional resilience to go through what you went through and to continue on? So those were some of the, just some of what I asked people to choose among. And I'm really excited because the result is this very wonderful compilation of essays, chapters that demonstrate the importance of diversity on the bench and throughout our justice system, and offers many life lessons. And I'd like to just talk about 5 of those life lessons that I'd like to share with you today. The first is that speaking truth to power is best accomplished with friends. Joan Dempsey Klein was the first woman to serve as presiding justice of a division of the California Court of Appeal. The complete absence of any positive role models in her childhood drove Justice Klein to a lifelong determination to pave the way for and to mentor the women coming up behind her. Consciously taking a page from the civil rights movement, Justice Klein further recognized that group action by women speaking truth to power with a unified voice was the prerequisite for meaningful change. And this theme emanated throughout the book as the judges shared their stories where they regretted staying silent and helped to bring about change through group action with allies. The second lesson is you cannot separate life experiences from judicial decision-making. Rosalie Wall was the first woman justice on the Minnesota Supreme Court. Her early years were filled with hardship. Her mother died when she was 3. Her father had to move the family around for work constantly. At one point, she was able to live on a farm with her grandmother. And it was at that point, at 7 years old, that she witnessed her brother and her grandfather killed at a railroad crossing when a train neglected to sound its whistle coming over a rise. She later lost her fiance in a military training accident. And all of these life experiences drove her ultimately to wanting to have a career in the public sector. And her first foray was when she realized that her county needed a bookmobile. And she put together a well-researched, carefully thought through proposal for the county commissioners about why that bookmobile would be a wonderful thing and how it could be financed and everything you would need to do to be able to get a bookmobile. And when she was done with the presentation, the county commissioners dismissed from the room Rosalie Wall and other supporters, and then behind closed doors, they voted against the proposal. And she was really, her real drive at that point for a public career had to do with the fact that she wanted to be part of a system that doesn't exclude people. She wanted to be part of a system that understood and made sure that everybody was visible within it. Her power of persuasion was anchored in a deeply rooted belief in inclusivity that included a lifelong dedication to eliminating the barriers caused by sexism, racism, and social and economic disparities. But Justice Wall's life experience also taught her that an enduring legal solution should incorporate a full understanding of the emotional, social, and economic context behind the legal problem. She wanted everyone represented at the table when decisions affecting them were being made. And she knew that life experiences and emotion play a significant role in every stage of the law. We are all driven in what we do in our work by our life experiences and by our emotions. Sensitivity to this holistic approach and knowing who she was made her the revered figure that she became in her state. Federal District Court Judge Nancy Gertner said it this way in her own chapter. Judge Gertner was a very prominent civil rights lawyer when she was nominated to be on the bench. And she said this in the book. When Clarence Thomas was confirmed to the Supreme Court, his metaphor for the kind of judge that he would be was stripped down like a runner, without entangling opinions or prejudgments. She continued, "That's absurd in my view. We pick judges in their 40s and 50s, presumably with life experience. We understand that they are likely to have opinions, feelings, positions. Everyone who decides he or she is going to be a judge must move to neutral. And that move should be no more difficult for a civil rights lawyer than for a prosecutor or a corporate lawyer, for a woman than for a man." And Judge Gertner continued, "I've always been suspicious of the juror who came before me and would say, especially in a high-profile case, 'I know nothing, I read nothing, I have no opinions.' I have always felt more comfortable with a juror who acknowledges his or her opinions, who is committed to struggling with them. I knew who I was, who I had been, what I believed in, a passion for justice, a determination to work and work all hours of the night until I found an answer. Looking at the people before me in court as people I might have grown up with or represented, feeling empathy, and yet learning detachment." The third lesson I'd like to share is that there are no one-size-fits-all answers to career challenges. So it's important to be creative in charting your path. Consuelo Bland Marshall is a senior district judge of the U.S. District Court of California, only the 7th woman of color to serve as an Article III judge in the country. She wrote about the many times that she felt she was not ready to move forward in her career as she tried to manage work and young children. And at one point, she tells this story that she left her job in the city attorney's office to go work with Johnny Cochran, who was then opening his own law firm. And he wanted her to be part of it and promised her whatever flexibility she needed. I actually appreciated that story in particular because I left a beloved government job as a young lawyer when my kids were little, because I was recruited to a law firm that was very close to my house. And I chose the flexibility of working very close to my house to being in a job that I really loved in the public sector, but was in the city, and it was just a horrifying commute. When Judge Bland Marshall was encouraged to apply to be a juvenile court judge, she was thrilled at the opportunity, but feared the lack of flexibility in that role. Obviously, judges is one place where it's really tough to do the whole flexibility thing in terms of what you do with your time. Ultimately, she was able to move forward because her husband committed to use his greater flexibility to accept more responsibilities at home with for the children during the day. Today, she mentors many young women who seek her advice on a wide range of challenges. They ask her whether biases will impact their opportunities for promotion. They question their ability to manage their work-life responsibilities, and they fear for their future when considering how to confront sexual harassment in the workplace. As she wrote in the book, their questions demonstrate that even as significant progress has been made, much remains to be done, that women are still asking these questions today that have been asked for decades. The fourth lesson is follow unexpected opportunities whenever they arise. Rosemary Burkett has been a nun, a teacher, and a trial lawyer. And that was before she became the only person to have served as a state trial court judge, a state appellate court judge, a state Supreme Court judge, where she was the first woman and first Hispanic woman, a federal appellate court judge in the 11th Circuit, and a judge on an international tribunal where she still currently sits. In her chapter, Judge Burkett wrote that her life's theme has been living the life of the moment, being open to whatever opportunities of any kind that presented itself. She described that many of these experiences were so meaningful in her life and talked about some of them, and then spoke of how formative they were. And in expressing her gratitude for saying yes to these various adventures that she seized upon when they arose, she also talked about the pleasure she took in music, sports, travel, friendships. It would be reasonable to look at her examples and say that her accomplishments are simply unattainable to most people, that they appear superhuman. But as I read it and thought about it, my perspective, I realized, was that those who appear to be doing superhuman things in their profession, in their work, are in reality following their passions and following their interests, which just allows them to do more. But doing so can also feel like a luxury when you're simply trying to get through the many challenges of today. And the book is full of stories that reveal the possibilities of life and the value of people in your life who can help you move past today and think about the future you want to create for yourself. In discussing her own unexpected opportunities, Anne Claire Williams, the first woman of color on the 7th Circuit District Court, wrote about how her parents' belief in her, along with her belief in herself, were the foundation of her success. She stated her career philosophy is this: when a door is closed, you find a way to open it. And otherwise, you move on to a new door. The fifth lesson is use your skills on behalf of our system of justice to right wrongs. Bernice Donald recently retired from the 6th Circuit Court of Appeals. She described how she faced her fears to be one of the first Black students to integrate her high school, walking through its doors and feeling the hostile atmosphere. I want to read a portion of what she wrote because it was so deeply impactful. They called us ugly names and refused to treat us as one of their peers. The school even canceled prom and various social events for fear of race mixing. But I knew early on that I was not there to make friends. I was there for access to the school's wealth of resources. And imagine that being the feeling that you have to have when you go through high school. She continued, I was a dark-skinned Black girl with a speech impediment from a poor family, just seeking to make a life for myself by pursuing passions that would make my mother proud. So that is exactly what I did. I spent hundreds of hours studying their cutting-edge textbooks. I utilized their state-of-the-art science labs. I explored their well-stocked libraries, and I met frequently with their speech therapists to eradicate my impediments. Even when teachers were dismissive and spoke condescendingly, I fought for my education. I sat on the front row of every class by myself until the day I graduated and received my diploma. And you can feel the loneliness of that experience coming off the page. But then it got worse. By the end of high school, I had received several scholarships for my academic achievement. But because of the high school's racist policies, my guidance counselor never informed me that I had received scholarship offers that would provide the necessary resources for me to attend college. Here I was, a student in a place of opportunity, yet my own teachers and administrators built an infrastructure in favor of my ruin. Her story is not just deeply touching, it is also a call to action. Consider that had she written this as a children's book today, or a chapter in a children's book today, that it very likely would be banned in Florida right now and in some of the other states that are putting into place these draconian laws about what children can learn. As lawyers, we have an obligation to protect the Constitution and the rule of law. The stories in her honor are filled with gratitude and signs of progress, but they are mixed with the recognition that we still have very, very long way to go. Your work with Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts is critical to the justice system in this state. I feel the same about my work with Lawyers Defending American Democracy, where we do focus on how we can galvanize the legal profession, bar associations, law students to become more engaged in the fight to protect our democracy and the rule of law in these difficult times. We are all working to create a more just society, recognizing that the journey these days is somewhat perilous. But I take great comfort in the lessons from these judges and the hazards they navigated to achieve the pinnacle of their profession. And I find joy in the fact that each one of them mindfully worked to create fairness and opportunities for others. And we should all be modeling ourselves on their wonderful lessons. I thank you. Thank you so much, Debbie.
Thank you so very much. That was really moving. Thank you. We next will be presenting Judge Doris Smith-Ribner with our Judge Justin Johnson Award, and Judge Ledbetter, hopefully on Zoom, will be presenting the award.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. The Justin Johnson Award is named for the beloved and highly esteemed Pennsylvania Superior Court judge. Judge Johnson is now retired from the bench, but nonetheless remains an active advocate for equal access to justice, particularly in the Pittsburgh community. With this award, Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts honors others who share his vision and are committed to improving the court system. I'm delighted to present this year's award to my former colleague, the Honorable Doris Smith-Ribner. After graduating from the University of Pittsburgh and its law school, and spending a number of years in private practice in Allegheny County and 1 year as a judge on its Court of Common Pleas, Judge Smith-Ribner was elected to our Commonwealth Court in 1987. She was the first woman of color elected to an appellate court in Pennsylvania. And perhaps because of her excellent reputation as a judge, in 2002, our court achieved the first female majority in an appellate court in Pennsylvania, and we believe in the country. I can't relate even a fraction of her accomplishments on the Commonwealth Court, but two come to mind that I must mention. She was assigned in 1993 to oversee a suit by the Pennsylvania Human Rights Commission to eliminate racial segregation and unequal educational opportunity in the Philadelphia School District. Among the many improvements she made to the district's education, she ordered implementation of a full-day kindergarten for the first time for all eligible students in Philadelphia. And as I'm sure you can understand, This has resulted in great educational benefits for all of the students, and particularly for helping to equalize learning opportunities for those from disadvantaged backgrounds. Judge Smith-Ribner was also instrumental in establishing our mediation program, which has been a huge success in resolving cases that otherwise would have cost litigants time and money to reach a result that would be in accordance with the law, but might not be the best or the fairest result for the parties involved. Judge Smith-Ribner was respected by both her law clerks and her colleagues for her hard work and her intense dedication to justice and fairness. A former clerk said of Judge Smith-Ribner that she was very dedicated and expected the same of her staff, but that she was also inspirational, saying, "Of course you can," when someone expressed self-doubts. I can remember sitting with Judge Smith-Ribner on the bench and seeing the covers of the briefs that were being argued, that she had written notes that completely covered the front of the briefs. And while I didn't try to read what she had written, you could tell by looking at them the amount of hard work and detail and thoughtfulness that had gone into each and every case, because every case had a cover that was full of her notes. And she asked wonderful questions and wrote wonderful opinions. She was a mentor to young lawyers, especially persons of color or those from other disadvantaged groups. In fact, very recently, I ran into a young lawyer and I asked her if she knew that Judge Smith-Ribner was getting this award. Her face broke into a great smile and she said, "Oh, that's wonderful. She was a mentor to me and I owe so much to her example and her support." Now, it's not unusual for judges to mentor and support their own clerks, but it is rare for such support to reach across chambers. But that's what Judge Smith-Ribner did. She was a mentor to all who needed the help. And she did this all while raising her beautiful and talented daughter, Sarah. When I first came to the court in 1996, I went to visit Judge Smith-Ribner in her chambers, and there was Doris sitting at her desk working hard on cases, and about 10 feet away from her desk, standing at a table coloring, was Sarah, who was at that point was about 8 or 9 years old. Sarah grew into a lovely teenager and then into a beautiful and accomplished businesswoman, no doubt due to her mother's guidance and example. And those of you who have raised small children while working in a profession like the law, whether as a judge or a lawyer, know how difficult that is and what dedication it takes. In 2009, our court lost a valued colleague when Judge Smith-Ribner retired, but she went on to continue on the private side to work passionately to aid those injured and disadvantaged by our justice system. Congratulations, Doris, on receiving the Justin Johnson Award. Well deserved.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Judge Smith-Ribner. You brought back a lot of memories.
Yes.
It was a wonderful, wonderful experience serving on Commonwealth Court and certainly having you as a colleague. And I thank you for what you've done for that court and for the people of this Commonwealth. I am truly honored to receive the 2023 Judge Justin Johnson Award, given by an organization that I respect so highly, the Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts. I'm especially proud because Judge Johnson was a mentor. He was a dear friend. He was someone who possessed high standards, ethical and moral standards. And he was so respected by many within our profession, having served as a judge on the PA Superior Court for 27 years, from 1980 to 2007. I might mention that he was appointed by Governor Thornburg in 1980. And then he ran, of course, and won the election. Governor Thornburg also appointed me to the trial court in Allegheny County, and I think it was 1984. But I can't say enough about Judge Johnson. I met him when I was a young law student at Pittsburgh University. I moved to Pittsburgh from Cleveland, where I was born and raised. And he was one of the first lawyers who I met. I worked my way through undergrad and law school in the law firm of Brown, and well, he had various names for the law firm, but Bert Brown, attorney. There was Honorable Katie Wright Irvis, who was the first Black Speaker of the House of Representatives in the entire nation. There was Tommy Harper, who became a judge on the Common Pleas Court, and Everett Utterback, who was an expert in estate law. But I met Judge Johnson because he, of course, had relations with those few Black lawyers in Allegheny County. And he instantly became a mentor because he talked about hard work. He talked about the law. He talked about advocating for justice. He talked about judicial independence. And that was a special note that he made during all of his sessions and meetings, us few Black law students and lawyers, promoting judicial independence, because that's what we deserve, and that's what the citizens and the voters in this Commonwealth and around the nation want. They want courts that are independent. They want judges who are independent and who make decisions based on law and fact. I wrote a research article last year dealing with the history of Black judges and justices in the Commonwealth appellate court system. And I wrote about Judge Johnson's commitment to mentorship. That's one thing that stands out for me about Judge Johnson. He believed in mentoring young students, young lawyers. His door was always open. He always accepted a phone call when you wanted advice, or simply wanted some support for various reasons. He was one of the few Black lawyers who we had at that time, back in the 1970s, to start the Homer S. Brown Law Association. And that was an organization that was devoted to supporting young law students, young lawyers of color. And I think most know that Judge Homer Brown was the first Black trial judge in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And he was my law partner's father. My law partner was Bert Brown, one of the most prominent lawyers in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, who did a lot of civil rights work in federal court, certainly a lot of criminal work, and worked in various other areas. But Judge Johnson also helped to establish the PBA, Minority Bar Committee. And we all know, served as an adjunct professor for many years at Duquesne Law School. And those kinds of activities and commitments reflect who he was. And as I said, that's what I will remember most about Judge Johnson. And that's why I am so proud that PMC has decided to give me the 2023 award in his name. We all know that an independent judiciary is the cornerstone of our democratic system of government. And I've oftentimes talked about judicial independence and the need for it, and how we've got to fight for it. And I've been doing it for decades. Even as a young law student, I would talk about judicial independence and how we've got to protect it, fight for it, do whatever we have to do to make it real. I have oftentimes said that judicial independence gives permission to judges to make decisions based solely upon the law and the facts. It promotes freedom from outside influences, whether they be political or otherwise. I, as I said, have advocated for judicial independence over many decades, and I will continue to do so for as long as I possibly can. And I do believe that the people of this Commonwealth are fortunate that PMC exists, especially at this time, and provides a strong advocacy and a strong voice for an ethical, a fair, and an independent judiciary in our Commonwealth. What I hope someday to see is that all the users of the court system in our Commonwealth walk into the courtrooms throughout this state, be they municipal, common pleas, appellate courts, and know that their decisions, that their cases will be decided based upon the law and the facts. And those users will be persons regardless of race, ethnicity, sex, political persuasion, or otherwise. I know that the time is short. I want to again thank PMC for giving me this award and recognizing my work over these last decades. And I again thank PMC for what it is doing for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and for all of us promoting judicial independence. Thank you very much. And again, Judge Ledbetter, thank you.
Well done.
Good evening. I'm Tom McGough. I'm Vice President of PMC. I'd like to thank Lauren Rikleen. I'd like to thank Judge Ledbetter. I'd like to thank all our sponsors for making this evening possible. I'd like to congratulate Anthony Jessel and especially Judge Smith-Ribner. Thank you so much for those remarks, Judge Smith-Ribner. These events give us an opportunity, give PMC an opportunity to showcase what it does. You've seen slides showing all the different programs that we present, all the different initiatives that we press forward. I've been practicing law a long time. I've been involved with PMC only slightly less long. I don't think there's ever been a time when our courts and the judicial officers who serve them have been more misunderstood, more misrepresented, and more mistreated. Your presence here tonight, whether it's virtual or whether it is in person, as well as your continued attention with PMC and to PMC to what we see as a mounting crisis, allows us to address all these issues as they continue to arise. With that, thank you again to our speakers, to our awardees. We have refreshments on either side of the room, and I hope we can continue the conversation on into the evening. Thank you very much.